with people who can go deeper with us. And so I'm kind of presenting today more differently than I usually do, because usually we do public speaking. My daughter's usually with me and we do a lot together. She thought maybe she could pick another day to come on. So Mikkel wants to, if you guys are open to it and have space, she wants to come on herself and kind of share her story a little bit and her perspective. But you know, my story kind of starts out with myself and my spouse at the time really struggling with different mental struggles uh, that I later found out are just really programs in us from our childhood. And and as I studied and researched after trying to find help from everything that I was familiar with, and a lot of mainstream things initially, and then after that doesn't work, and doesn't have a long-term effect, probably like a lot of you started looking elsewhere and trying to find things outside of the mainstream. And the interesting part is that I found some real help in a concept called neuro-linguistic programming. And I'm curious, how many of you have heard of that? So I know what kind of level to speak on. You can raise your hand in your picture or on your little icon. Just get a feel for how many people have heard of neuro-linguistic programming. It's basically a pattern recognition methodology that psychologists try to learn, some of them, but rarely go deep enough. But the people who it was created after were psychologists, but they were exceptionally good ones that had massive results really quickly. And when I ran into that and I saw some of it happen, and actually I had a son that was struggling with some really severe stuff, and he went and in one day he completely changed. I was just blown away when he came home a different person. He was 19, I think, at the time. And if any of you have 19-year-olds, you know how sometimes concerning they can be. And he came home so different. It just blew my mind. And I suddenly had this massive amount of hope that there was things that could actually work and change and change permanently. And I realized I started to study a lot of neuroscience. That's kind of where my journey took me. I was more of a logical thinker, and I just needed to understand it. If I could put it through logic and a construct of understanding consciously, then I could do something with it, right? Because I've learned a lot. I've studied a lot of different things. There's not, I usually have a little slide presentation I go through. It has a whole list of things that I researched and studied, and even took college courses from Yale and different things just to, find out just what I could do to figure out what was going on within myself, and especially my spouse and kids, because those were the ones closest to me that I saw a lot of suffering. And we got to the point where there was a lot of dysfunction, and some within my family that even, it was, trips to the ER for what they thought were heart attacks, but were panic attacks. I mean, things that were pretty severe, and personality disorders and eating disorders, and it just goes on. There was just so much there, and it was so like I was so lost as a father, just trying to figure it out and having my own struggles. And as I started to learn the neuroscience behind it, the understanding of the neuroscience started to change me. And I saw it change me, and it started to give me a hope on a new level that I had never experienced. And it charged me up like nothing. Like, I literally started to learn this, what we call reprogramming process, that this process of being able to create the type of questions that brings together the incongruencies within us and straighten them out and help us find a congruent way of thinking. Because as a child, I learned that as a child, we're bringing in all these experiences and we're taking everything in as truth. We're not putting them through a filter. When our brain is developing, our little brain is developing neurons, and as the brain is developing, as the whole system, the neurological system that's in us, is multiplying cells, the way that it's determining how those connect is is fascinating, and it has to do with what experiences we're going through all the way from when we're in the womb to into our mid 20s. It's being massively influenced by these experiences, these unfiltered experiences that are creating technically what I found from the neuroscientists' uh, point of view is that the brain runs on a chemical system. And that chemical system is 100% all the reason that it has to function at all is it's to meet chemical needs. So from a neuroscientist point of view, and this has really been life-changing for me, that we think and we process and we hold on to beliefs and we respond in ways that meet chemical needs. They all are there to meet chemical needs of the brain. So the brain, what I learned is that the brain is constantly trying to keep itself functioning and alive by meeting chemical needs through the function of the brain. In other words, the brain is activated based off of thoughts and beliefs and experiences and all of our five senses as it brings in data. All of that is creating a chemical experience that the brain needs to have. It's the only needs that we actually have are for that brain to be met, for that brain to keep us alive, for the brain to stay alive. Brain dies, of course, we die, right? And our brain's activity is all based off of this chemical reward system. And as I started putting this together, I started to reframe the way that I see my experiences. And I learned how the old way that I would determine or define an experience, define this moment in time, is that it would be contrasted to all of my past moments in time. So I would take all the data gathered from the past and I would bring it forward in the moment to determine what's going on. And at NLP, we call a lot of these generalizations. We have these generalizations that are the way that we determine what is. And then we believe that it is the way that it is. So we have this perception of our reality that is not really a representation of reality. As a matter of fact, if you ask a biologist what the purpose of all of our five senses are, most of us will answer that, well, they're to help us see, hear, feel, touch, everything reality, right? What reality is. But the actual reality is that they are there to meet chemical needs that are there to keep us from dying and keep our species going. That's what a biologist would say. So in the process of doing that, in the process of developing as a child, then we start to put together these patterns in our brain that meet those chemical needs. And so those chemical needs are now, they turn into, as an adult, these patterns of feelings and emotions and experiences and perceptions of things that can be really detrimental. So they can start to put us in a place where we don't want to be. So if you look at the mental health struggles that people go through and that we go through, we look at those, then we see that it's a perception of our reality, right? So we're looking at reality and we say, this is reality. And so, boom, I'm stressed or I'm worried or I'm anxious or I'm depressed or whatever. And so being able to have a way of thinking, to rebuild the way of thinking, the way to determine or analyze our experience is what I found would release people completely from mental health struggles. So I put together all these parts and pieces that I found as I went along and saw massive change in myself, massive change in my family, and then extended family, and then friends and family as I was, helping them understand and see the same things. And it became, and here's one of the keys is that when you find this congruency, and most of you, I'm sure, have experienced things like this, we all do, where we suddenly understand something and it's so clear to us that there's just no reason to even, like, it is for sure. Like, we know, we feel it inside of us. Like, It is an absolute. We don't have to think anymore. It is the reality, right? And as I realized that what I was doing by moving out these beliefs, these incongruencies, or we could also call them fears, because a lot of us talk about fears and how fears hold us back. And if you take a step before fear, it's a threat. It's a threat of losing something. According to the neuroscientists and the model that we use, the fear of what we're losing is the ability to meet the chemical needs. So we have these patterns to meet chemical needs based off of these reality, these beliefs about reality. And then when something comes along and takes it from us or removes the ability to have it, then suddenly it's threatening our ability to meet those chemical needs. And that's all the brain cares about. According to the neuroscientists, that's all it cares about is meeting these chemical needs. Now, as you guys all know, the brain runs off of electricity and therefore frequencies. So these frequencies that go along with it are also a crucial part of understanding how to make changes to them. So someone, for example, and I'm going to use relationships as an example. And the title of what I'm talking about today is using goal setting to help us with mental health, as opposed to what it normally does, which is the opposite. We set goals and it affects our mental health to the negative. Right? We start hating on the fact of setting goals. Matter of fact, we don't even like to call it a goal setting system. We like to call it a creation process, because we're creating the life that we want. We're creating. But when we set these goals, the way that it's typically done, it creates a lot of anxiety. We try to push and get them done. And we don't the world doesn't typically understand well how to use goal setting to help them be happy and at peace and full of joy and a relentless enthusiasm for life that just makes us want to go out and get and achieve and be. And that is what I found is the resolution to all of the mental health struggles. And I'll tell you how extreme of experiences I was able to have with this. As Bree mentioned, I was able to put this together in a model. And I went to a clinic where he was a functional neurologist that focused on traumatic brain injury. And traumatic brain injury is almost always accompanied with mental health struggles, sometimes even severe mental health struggles. And he had gained a reputation of helping people with all kinds of mental health struggles, personality disorders, addiction, everything. As a matter of fact, when it comes to addiction, the neuroscientists looking at the brain and the activity of the brain, if they look at someone who has an addiction to a substance or a behavior compared to someone who maybe has severe depression or anxiety or panic attacks, it actually looks almost the same. So the thing I learned in there is that mental health struggles, most mental health struggles, are actually a neural addiction in the brain. So they're an addiction to a pattern that meets chemical needs. Depression, anxiety, relationship issues that might relate to personality disorders, eating disorders. And even things as extreme as schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or dissociative disorders. Like I found in this time, I shared this with this functional neurologist. He was totally open to it. He said, everything you've explained to me is so neuroscience-y, and I'm very familiar, and all it was accurate. However, I've never heard it presented quite that way. And so he actually invited me to work with some of his treatment-resistant patients. And one of them had borderline personality disorder. One of them was under suicide watch with multiple suicide attempts, and it had been under watch for months and struggled for a few years with tons of interventions to try to help him, and was still treatment resistant. And then another one that had a really severe struggle. And at this time, the thing that I had learned is that once you get the brain in this certain place where you've broken down enough of you've helped it break down some of the identity level belief systems, then you can start to reload it. You can start to undo the identity so far to where the identity just kind of gets obliterated and they're ready to put a new one in. And I would do this all in one day. So I would spend an entire day with someone It would be an 8 hour, 7 or 8 hours of this reprogram, teaching them the reprogramming. It wasn't about me reprogramming them. It was about showing them what I was doing while I was doing it with them so they could do it, so they could continue to use it, and therefore make it so that these changes were permanent instead of somewhat temporary. So from those first patients, after I met with those first 3 patients, the doctor met with them again, did the same measurements on their brains, and came back and said, "This is amazing. They met with you once and they're different people. Like, these are complete, absolute changes." And he said, "I want to clear out one of my rooms. I want you to work with all my patients." And he said, and I was so excited. And I wasn't surprised. I was really excited, but I knew that it was going to happen. From the minute I had the idea to go talk to him, I was like, this is going to happen this way. And I saw it all ahead of time. Of course, you guys all know how that works. So, so I went in and for 2 years, I worked with his patients one-on-one. People from, even he had such a reputation. He was bringing people in from different countries. He was big people from out of state, and working with people with, you know, some basic anxiety and even depression to severe cases where that anxiety turns into things like schizophrenia, like personality disorders, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic behavior disorder. I mean, there's a whole, I can go on. I don't know of any major category in psychology that in those 2 years that I didn't work with. And after those 2 years, my daughter actually, after about a year, my daughter joined me, and she started coming with me, started learning it, started working with me and doing it with me. And it just blew her away, of course. And she was just absolutely amazed by it and intrigued. And together we started thinking, this is big, like this is too big. We got to move bigger and create a bigger program and get to more people, start public speaking, doing groups. And when we left, that doctor told me that in his record, according to him and the feedback from the clients, we had a 96% success rate. And I worked with hundreds of people in that time. And I didn't turn anyone down. Everybody that was willing that I talked to, I would work with. And I didn't work with just one day with everybody, but probably 85% I would meet with just one day. As a matter of fact, I had a lady that came in who had 2 young children. She was a writer and a producer. She had struggled with self-harm, and she just could not understand it. And she had tried so many things to figure it out. And she would cut herself, and she would do all this to harm herself to try to deal with what she was experiencing mentally. And about a year and a half later, maybe it was 2 years, I got just a random email from her, and she said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me at all. We only met once." But she goes, "I just want you to know how incredibly life-changing that was for me." And so much so that my whole life has taken a turn in massive ways. I have been faced with some of the biggest life challenges since we met. And I have just gone through them with such capability and such power and such. She said, "I want to write a book about it. And I want your permission to share and to say what happened in that one day that completely changed my life." And that's one story. And I know a lot of people have one story. I literally have hundreds of stories at this point, because after we left that office, we started doing public speaking, we started building a program, and we've since helped hundreds more people. We actually train facilitators in this process, and we have about 50 trained facilitators that help people now. And in our program, they get to have a facilitator facilitate as they go through it. We do live sessions. But to kind of give you an idea, and usually I talk about that, and people say, you know, they say, like, what is it? Like, what are you doing? Like, what is this process? And we really call it deep learning. It's a methodology to help people understand things through a way of speaking and a way of presenting that involves a lot of questions. And questions bring in these different belief systems I talked about in the beginning. When we're little when our little mind is developing and taking in everything as truth, we create all these different truths, and life presents to us experiences where these truths try to come out, but they often don't agree with each other. They often don't agree with each other. As a matter of fact, you can tell when it happens because you have a feeling you don't like, right? It's that simple. Every time you have a feeling you don't like, it's because two or more belief systems tried to come to the surface to your conscious mind and coexist, but they can't coexist because they don't agree with each other. In other words, the world's this way. No, the world's this way. No, it's this way. But then it just sits in your mind and doesn't do anything until an event happens, right? Well, the creation of these questions also invites these things to come out, but in a less obtrusive way, in a way that helps us organize and understand without the fear and without the threat that something bad's going to happen or whatever. So this method gives you an experience and teaches you how this works as you experience it so that it becomes you. It literally becomes how you then process this world instead of the contrasting of the past to the present, which is what we used to do. And this is our reality. This is our reality. It completely obliterates our reality the way it is in every painful and ineffective way. It leaves the foundation that's effective and works because you want that, which is the majority of our identity, is accurate and helpful and useful and great. It only takes a small percentage to wreck our lives and make us miserable. And so this method connects the logic with the emotion. And so by describing what the chemical experience is to our emotions, then we can start to consciously understand the messages that are being given to us. Because that's ultimately what is it. Every time we have a feeling we don't like, right? It's a simple litmus test. Do you like the feeling or do you not like the feeling? And if you don't like the feeling, then there is a message in it. And it's an ability to value the message. As soon as you value the message, that the message has a purpose, that every feeling you have you don't like, every piece of suffering, every pain, every anything that you don't like, we can shift the framework around it to where it doesn't create the threat. As a matter of fact, it becomes the gift. It becomes the next piece that you need to put into the puzzle of your experience so that you can become and achieve and have what you truly want. And so this system that we use in our program is that we do all the basic things to take out this foundational identity of how we see this world and how we fit into it. So there's the world and how we see it, and then there's our place in it. It's how we fit into the world, and that is what determines our experience. 100% determines our experience. So if we're miserable, if we're unhappy, if we're not achieving what we want, if we don't have the relationships in our life that we want, all these different things, they're all built into this foundational identity. And so we go through this process, and it takes about 5 hours, and we break down this identity, and we take it down. We take down all these belief systems, these incongruencies, these foundational beliefs, and I hear in these meetings that we've been having, I haven't attended live, but I've watched a lot of them, and they're freaking amazing. I really liked Cammie and Shelby's a month or so ago. They were fire. I just love those guys. I can't wait to meet them and get to know them because those guys are nailing it. And so a lot of other people are. As a matter of fact, I listened to David for a while too. Freaking, all that masculine, feminine, the understanding of all these things is really the key. And people say, well, I know, but I don't do. And my answer to that is, well, you don't quite know enough, or you wouldn't do. Like, there's more you're missing. You've oversimplified the equation. And so you're not catching on to the depth at which will change your behavior. And so we have, once we break down all this identity stuff and we get these foundational principles in place, then we help people go through this process in our modules where they break down these things that they want. It's our goal setting, but we call it our creation process. It's the creation of your new identity, but it's also the creation of your future. And we have these series of questions. So what this model does is it teaches you how to propagate questions, how to create phenomenal questions. So if any of you are familiar with Socrates, that was one of the things that I studied. As a matter of fact, a part of my story that I didn't share is that when I started to grasp these ideas, I started to understand this perception thing and the neuroscience behind it and how it drives us. One of the first things I did is I got out of my old life. I got out of the 9 to 5 job. I got out of the rat race that I'd been running for so long, and I'd been fairly successful in a career with and trying quite a few different jobs to try to make it better and make it and fix it and make myself happy going to a 9 to 5 job, working for somebody else, doing all these things. And I got that out of my head, all my beliefs around money, authority, those who had control over my experience, whether it's a boss or even a church leader or anyone who could make a decision that would affect my life. I had a lot of these maps around it that were triggering. When I got through all those, I worked on those first because I was like, what I need is time. I know there's more here and I want more time to figure it out. And so I actually left my career with actually no plan. I just left one day with nothing in front of me to do and let myself get into this. And I wasn't one of those people that had a bunch of money in the bank. I didn't have anything to go off of. I just stopped everything. And I knew that would get my brain thinking. I had to overcome a whole bunch of, you all can imagine what you'd have to overcome to do that, right? Like the pressure from my spouse and taking care of my kids. I had 6 kids that I was taking care of, like all these things. I didn't have anything to fall back on financially. So I just did it. Like I figured this out and I was like, that's my old identity. And I let it go. And I've never worked since that day. And within 3 months, I had started a business. It wasn't what I do now, but it was just another business to free up my time. I was making 7 times what I'd ever made before. I was fairly successful before that, so it was great. I grew up really poor. I had to work through all those maps and thinking about money and how it plays out and got through all that. And it freed me up. And it freed me up so much so that I had enough money in a short period of time that I didn't have to work for the rest of that year, which was about 8 months. And I spent that 8 months every day, all day, researching my brains out. I was obsessed. I loved this stuff. It changed me so much. And I wanted to give it so bad that and there were still people around me suffering. And I was trying to figure out what their suffering still was. And I was still suffering. And as a matter of fact, we're all suffering and we don't even realize the suffering. I look back, if you would have asked me my previous life how I was doing, it would have looked great. I would have said it was great. I was following the belief systems that I was taught. I was, fairly successful financially, enough to have the things I didn't have as a kid, which was I had nothing, so it was pretty easy to win that one over. But I got to travel. I had toys. I had a boat. I had motorcycle. All the things I wasn't able to have as a kid. And so I would have told you I was doing really well and I was really happy. And if you would have looked at me, you would have thought probably the same thing. But when I look back now, I think I was miserable. I was miserable. And I just didn't even know it. Like I was so confined in this thinking, in this world, and the way it sees and the way it thinks, that I was miserable. And my guess is that in 10 years from now, I'm going to look back and see myself now and think that I was miserable too, because I'm just going to keep going with it. So that I spent about 8 months researching 12 plus hours a day, like literally all day, every day. I ate, I exercised, I did a lot. And my research included exercise. It included interactions with my family. It included like eating and everything. And it completely transformed me. And by the time I had spoke to that doctor, I was a completely different person. And I was really ready to share with this world, like how powerful every individual is as soon as they get this crap out of their way, all these programs out of their way so that they could see. And so this reprogramming process that I took to this clinic and started teaching people, and like literally people would walk in with an addiction and they would walk out without the addiction, and they would never have a problem with it again. And I would follow up with people. That first person I worked with, I have followed up with him years later. He said, I still don't know to this day what I was thinking that taking my own life would would be an option or even think that it would solve something or that it would, you know, and I over that time that I was there, I actually worked with quite a few people who were struggled with suicidal ideations and suicide attempts. And I can tell you story after story after story. Like they are phenomenal because we go through a process at the end of the session to solidify and they tell me like what's going on in their head and how confident and how, had one kid that was had a his dad was a psychologist, mainstream psychologist, one of the upper people in the LDS services for their uh, counseling and therapy. And yeah, this kid was struggling with suicide and self-harm and all these things. And at one point in the session, he just stood up and put his hands on his head and he's like, holy crap. He said, what? And he had just come from a facility that he had lived in for 3 weeks, and they were teaching him all these skills and everything so that he could get out of his suicidal ideations. And I'd asked him about it, and he said, yeah, it was really great. The people were so kind and non-judgmental, and they taught me all these tools and all this stuff I could do. And I'm so much more prepared for this struggle and this and that and coping with it. And he stood up and he was doing this thing, and he's like, holy crap. And I said, what about all that stuff you learned? He goes, I don't need it. He's like, I don't need any of it. You have completely changed me. I just want you to know that if I never see you again, I just want you to know you have completely changed who I am. Like everything. I am so excited to go running out of here into my new life. And it was phenomenal. And that was someone who had therapy for like, the kid was only 22, I think, and he probably had 15 years of therapy, and his dad was a therapist. So it was a pretty fun moment for him to come to that realization. so and so so this program that we have, and I'm trying to watch the time to make sure I'm keeping things.
You're totally good on time. We're just gonna let you take the whole time. We usually do breakout rooms, but we're gonna let people actually engage with you. We've got a small enough number where we're gonna let them do Q&A with you. So you're
Oh,
good.
great.
Mhm.
That's awesome. I would love
Yes.
that. That
Yep.
that is awesome because I'm guessing there's questions coming up as I'm sharing all these things.
Yes.
So like now we go out and we public speak, we go to conferences, we go to the energy healing conference, went to, of course, Yin on Fire was freaking fun. I can't wait to do that again. I wish they do it in the summer when it's a little warmer, but I'm still there. Even if you did it in the depth of winter, I'd be there. So and we'd be ice skating on that pond. So but but we've grown this program now, like I said, and we have facilitators that can learn this process, they can understand it, use it to help other people, other practitioners. We've had therapists that have gone through it, that have added it to their practice. We've had, yeah, all kinds of people that do other modalities, and they really love this modality, but they learn this foundation, and then they apply it to that modality, and then all of a sudden, like that modality just takes off in effectiveness because they understand the chemical system. The driver of all of our physiological experiences is our brain and the frequencies it's running on. So understand where that comes from at an identity level and help somebody change it. And I could go on about the health benefits that I've heard back from people, like the things, we don't target like physiological health, but the individual always does. Like they always discover and find, almost always. The miraculous stories I've heard from people. I mean, and I'll just share one more because there's so many though. We have 50 facilitators. They can tell you their stories of their clients and themselves and on and on. But we had one lady that came and saw us speak, and she was just bawling after. She goes, I know this is it. This is it. I've been trying to help my daughter for like 15 years, who's had seizures, and her seizures got so bad, and she started to get OCD with her seizures, so that her triggers for the OCD would cause the seizure. So now she was so debilitated, she was at home on a couch. She couldn't get off the couch. She literally was stuck on the couch because of all of the triggers. I mean, if you can imagine someone who has panic attacks or someone who has OCD where things have to be certain ways, they can't touch certain things, they can't, and then add a seizure on top of that response. Like this was an extreme case. Her mother had studied nutrition to no end trying to help her daughter. Her daughter had done every diet that there is out there trying to help her with this. And she had become a nutritionist. She literally was, her mom was a nutritionist now because she had studied and learned so much about nutrition, but had never been able to help her daughter. And her mom will get up and tell this whole story, bawling her eyes out because it's so amazing. And she got her daughter, she started on the program. And the day she started the program, she got off the couch. She leaned into all of her triggers. She went outside. The next day, she went out with what she called her narcissistic in-laws, who she had always struggled with, totally loved being with them, still has now has an incredible relationship with her in-laws. Her husband's a school teacher, and he was just like, didn't know what to do. Her mom had still been coming over and taking care of her, making meals, washing dishes, taking care of the house because she couldn't get up and do things. So, and from that day forward, she has just been on fire. She has been one of our like most successful facilitators. She is just lit up about life. Like, and her stories just keep going. She just has so many that she tells about this, about what's happened even since that day. She hasn't had a seizure come on since that day. And she had started when she was 6 years old. So yeah, we're talking pretty cool stuff. And she knows what happened. She can tell you what changed in her mind that stopped all that and why it was happening. She understood the chemical system. This concept that everything that our brain does is to meet chemical needs is thorough. It is very vast. There's so much to learn about it. But she had figured out what the triggers were and what it was meeting her needs by being sick, by having OCD and having the struggles. She has done, we have another lady that's in her later years in life. She's probably 55 or so, who struggled with OCD so bad she couldn't leave her house for almost anything. There was one thing she could leave it for. She's been actually tracking all of her OCD triggers. And a couple months ago, she came to a meeting. She said, I just passed 100 triggers that I've overcome with my OCD. And just totally obliterated them so that she loves when the triggers happen now instead of wonders if it's going to have a negative effect or anything. So, so it is just so fun, and it has just lit up my life up, as you can imagine. And it literally is the answer to completely changing your life and overcoming mental struggles of almost all sorts. It is so powerful to take the extreme shift of being completely out of control of your life to completely being the creator of your life and buying into that 100%. And that is the answer to overcoming mental health struggles. But I haven't seen very many people figure out how to get someone there. And this model does it. This model teaches us how to do it ourselves. Like, I don't do it for them. I show them parts and pieces and I teach it to them, then I let them do it. As a matter of fact, when we do group sessions, we'll have these people struggling, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to stop and I'm going to let you guys do it. Like, you guys help that person through it. You do the process and you create these questions, and they do it. And it blows this person's mind and they change forever. And everyone in there is just like, we did it. Like, it works so well. It's so amazing. So it is just a blast, and it's becoming a community. That was one thing I didn't realize that I was doing in the beginning, was creating a community. I just thought, wow, I'll just help people. I'll just help people. But now I've realized, wow, we've started this community. We had a big Christmas party this last month, and it was just a blast. And the people are just building relationships like nothing else. And it's just so amazing. So I realized that I had not been as engaged with this community that I loved participating in, and then that you guys were doing this. And so I went back and started watching people's meetings and going, just getting excited. Before I came to that, I was just like, oh man, this is awesome. This is another community. We need to merge our communities. And I'm super excited to do that. So, our company's name is Fulfill Life Yourself. And I guess I could put some links there.
Yeah, we
Um,
have some people that want to know. Jenny specifically asked, would love to know about your facilitator program. Yeah, why don't you actually share, if you're okay with that? Tell the people, yeah, where to find you, where to connect, how to go through the program. Yeah, will you tell us about all that?
yeah, so I just put I think I spelled it right, fulfilllifeyourself.com is our website. If you search Fulfill Life Yourself on YouTube or on the social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram, You'll find some of our stuff. We haven't focused a ton on social media, but we're starting to. So we have a bunch there, but there are a bunch of YouTube videos. But the website doesn't have anything about our facilitator course yet. We have a landing page that we haven't built in yet. We have been I think, I don't know if it's the epitome. This is our fifth website, I think. So we have ran into a lot of technical things along the way and literally are looking for someone that can help us with that and make that more fluid for us. But we have a small team. We have about 5 people and plus one in the Philippines that helps us. And we are ready to explode this year. We are really going to start doing some other stuff. One of them is a podcast, and then doing retreats. We want to start doing some big retreats where we bring people and have them family retreats and couple retreats. So bring the teenagers. I love working with teenagers. Everybody out there, the biggest message I have for parents is teenagers are the easiest thing on this planet. And we are just so screwed up as parents. And it's literally us causing all their problems. And so it's really easy to fix because we just change ourselves. And our teenagers also have the best feedback system for us from anyone. They literally know what we need to do, and we don't get it. We don't understand it. So that's kind of what our focus is this year. And we've been putting some time and effort into really putting something big together so that we really can take off because it just, yeah, I'm still obsessed with research. All the big names out there, I'm obsessed. I still do probably 4 hours of research a day still because it is just who I am now. It's my identity. If I'm ever having a struggling day or I get triggered or something really rough comes up, I can research and that pulls me out of it. I can find one of my best, resources of research and find things and read into them or study something or whatever. And neuroscientists, I follow some of the latest neuroscience research that's going on and I'm waiting for them to come out with their new data and everything. So that's what lights me up. But so yeah, and yeah, I'm open to other questions. If I didn't
So
answer them, let me know.
the direct question that I got was, is it a 3-month program and what's the cost? Like what's the duration and what's the cost to go through your program now
Yeah.
that they know where they can go?
Yeah, so the website has some of that on there, but for an individual to go through the program, it includes the first it's the 5-hour intensive session we call it. That's a recording that you watch. And it's basically the stuff I went over when I was meeting with people one-on-one for that whole day. Get all of that, and then there's 30 modules that you go through that are daily modules. The 5 hours to break down the old identity. It's not this extreme emotional thing that we're doing. We don't have these, there's a lot. I've studied so many things. I've seen all these different things. This is it's just weirdly simple and safe. And you don't have to take any of these big extremes of experiences. You just go through this new logic and understanding and remapping, and you just feel it and experience it. So the new identity gets taken down, challenges all these belief systems in a way that is not threatening. So you take them down, and then we start the understanding of the fact that it can be built up so that you can have that confidence going forward that it's okay that it's broken now because you're going to build a new one that's amazing. That's your choice, right? The identity most of us live in, most of it was not our choice. And we're not even very aware of it. And it's just how we are. And so this gives us the opportunity to build a new one. And these 30 modules you go through are to help you have daily experiences and exercises and things that you do to build that new identity. And one of them is that goal setting process. It's at the very beginning because everything we do after that is built on the foundation of that new creation that you have gone through. And so that has the 30 modules. And then we meet in groups. We have group sessions. We do them on Zoom. We do them in person. And I always encourage people, if you can, to come in person. We have people come from out of state. We've had people from all over. Last time we did one, we had someone from Hawaii that flew here for the session. And she just loved it. It was so life-changing for her. And, we have people from Idaho all the time, Arizona. We had some from Texas, family in Texas that keeps coming. And so whatever you can do to be in person is great, but we have it set up with Zoom in the back and it's all interactive and we can hear the people on Zoom and we do it all together. And so So we do these group sessions, and that's included. And then the thing that I'll put out there for this group is that if they want to do it, that so for an individual go through it, if they pay up front, it's $1,500. If they pay over time, it's a little bit more. So they each have a payment plan that you can do. The ones on the website, the payment plans are like $400 or $500, depending on if it's an individual, a family, or a couple. Um, but but if that's something you can't handle, we're a company that doesn't turn anyone away who wants to do it. Anyone, no matter what their scenarios, whatever their financial situation is, or anything, we have options for everyone. So that's a big part. I grew up really poor, so I'm really a good person to talk to if you're going through some financial struggle. And I went through a bunch of financial struggle too back when I was that story I told earlier that took me a little while to pull out of. Um, but this is just a way to get your head in a space where you can become so much more functional, so much more capable, really start to create the life you want. So we don't worry about the money side of it. I don't even track things very well. I'm like, you know what, you're paying, so just go ahead and do it, and then, and we have other things we can set up. But for a couple to go up, the upfront is 2,200 for a couple, or a whole family for 3,600, and they all get everything that's there. You can do it as a family or whatever. The thing that I want to offer to this group, if they go in and want to sign up, and we'll open up to questions in a minute, but is that we have facilitators that will facilitate. There's an extra cost to have a facilitator go through it with you, but I will pay for the facilitator to go through anybody here that wants to go through that, so that you have somebody. They'll meet with you 6 times, and it's about an hour session, and they've been trained in this process and these systems. You'll grow relationships like you wouldn't believe, because they will know you like no one on this planet knows you because they know how to do that. There's a lot of training involved. When you go through a facilitator course, I'll talk a little bit about that. You learn all these different things that I studied as I went through. I picked out the ones that I ended up using the most. So I took lots of courses, certifications I did all kinds of stuff in that 8 months. Literally, I had all day, every day, and I used them. I did all kinds of things, and I learned lots of stuff that I don't use very often, because I've picked out and they're good ones. They're great. There's a lot of stuff that I uh, learned that are really effective in a lot of ways, but I picked out the best ones, the ones that had the most impact, that I kept going back to when I was working with people. And I teach those to the facilitators. So there's a lot about a lot that's NLP-ish. So it's about learning people's word patterns, their body language, their eye movement, everything that can read them, tapping into their belief systems as they speak, so that they can use those same belief systems to create questions that help them move forward and understand and change things. So that's a big part of what being a facilitator is. If you go through the facilitator course, which is a separate course after you complete the first course, the 30, and you can actually complete it in 30 days if you want to just be diligent and do it every day. You can actually complete it in just over 30 days. And then you can go into the facilitator program, and the facilitator program is one where we have a whole bunch of online trainings that are recorded, and then we have a live one that is absolute. You can talk to any facilitator who's been through this. It's 3 days of absolute incredible, like mind-blowing experiences, like absolute shifts in ways to program you into being a facilitator, basically, so that you are in a position to sit with somebody and know what to do, that drives their understanding deeper and challenges them in a way that transforms the way that they process and understand. And then as a facilitator, you have unlimited access to our program, to the modules, and continued, there's a whole bunch of things that we're doing with facilitators. We're helping facilitators become public speakers. We're helping them. We're planning a conference where facilitators come and speak at those conferences, and like a whole bunch of stuff to amplify this experience. And I'll tell you, the people who have the really big shifts and changes, many of them become facilitators, and then they continue on, like, what could be better than doing this every day, like, and getting paid for it and making money as I do it, because we have a really large percentage rev share with facilitators when they bring new people in. And so we're really trying to set it up so that it takes off on its own. And it has been. Like, our facilitators have been just killing it. They're doing these events, they go out and speak, they do social media, and they bring people in all different ways. And it's just phenomenal for them to have a program. I looked at everything that people struggle with when they're trying to become a coach or trying to start a business, and tried to do all that stuff for them, so that all they have to do is go out, tell people to it, and give them a link and say, here, sign up, let's go. And then our system takes care of it. So we've gone through a lot of that to help people, make it easier for them. And we're open for facilitators to add additional skill sets and modalities to what they're doing when they work with people, as long as they don't prioritize it over the model. Because once they go through it, we'll know if they're experiencing it at the level that will help them become a good facilitator or not. And most people do. So
So the
yeah.
question, so if someone wants to go through the facilitation process and it's not on your website, do you want them to just reach out to you? Or
Yeah,
do you ask that they go through the program first and then look at the facilitation, right?
yeah.
Because
So
you
we
want
have
to
them go through.
experience it.
Yes, we want them to experience it so that they can make a decision that, yeah, this is what I want to do with my life, like going forward, at least a portion of my life.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, it is really common we get together, we have meetings, we have trainings, and people are just sharing like crazy. Like, if they could just share all day, all their miracles that they're experiencing, but we don't have that kind of time. So we let them do it in another thread. We're actually, well, I won't go into that. We're doing some stuff to expand that and make it even better. So
Right on.
yeah.
Alexis has a question in the chat. If you do you want me to read that to you, or can you see it?
Uh, Alexis.
Yes, she says she missed
Uh,
the first part of the presentation. So what she's asking is this a top-bottom approach where we focus on the mental process and then fix physical processes to the brain reprogramming, or is it also a bottom-up approach where you're going to start with body regulation to then change brain patterns? So she's
yeah,
asking if it's top only, top down.
yeah. So I would say it is the top down, where it's mentally what's going on. It's a depth mentally that changes physiology. But I just want to emphasize that we don't teach that. We don't teach the physiological side in the program. It just happens as a side effect. It just, people's elements just fall away. They we have people come that have, like, chronic pain and all these different things, and we're like, our goal is to get them in their mind, to have them choose the experience they're having, to create the experience they're having, instead of being reactive to what's going on inside them. And it's just miraculous how many physiological things happen after that. I mean, we have one lady that had Lyme's disease. We have multiple people that have had things like um, chronic pain from lots of different things, different. I'm trying to think of one. I can't think of them. Anyway, the ailments that I've seen people come back and tell me have changed are like vast. So many of them. Can't even tell. Allergies has been a common one for so many of them. But that's just an example of a simple thing that we see change in people. But
Oh,
yeah, I mean, it's pretty dang miraculous. And of course, everyone's different. It happens at different speeds. I have people come back years later and say, wow, like, I had so much to figure out within myself to finally get to where this ailment finally left me. Like, and again, I'll emphasize, we don't talk a lot about physical ailments in the program, but we talk about our neurological response to our perception and to our environmental experiences. And we use them as leverage to help ourselves. We see the physiological, we try to help people see the physiological experience they're having, what they would call a negative physiological experience, as the message and the opportunity to go deep into what they're experiencing mentally, so that they can see. And I'm really familiar with all those, body code and all the other things out there that use the physiology and the energy and all these different things. We have people in our program that have done all those things, and they come to our program and they're like, whoa, talk about permanent change. Like, consistent permanent change that really stays, like, because so much of it is, as we all know, is so connected to the mental side of it, but it's not just our brain, it's our whole nervous system. It's all of the neurons in our body and how they perceive and respond to the environment to meet chemical needs. Once you really understand the chemical needs system and how to put it to logic so you understand it, and then you put then you start to bring your logic together with your emotion, everything just takes off. Like everything changes so much. It's just crazy. I personally had a whole bunch of medical issues that I had had previously, some crazy ones, and had
Mm,
low blood sugar and a whole bunch of ailments that went along with that, and all these different things. Those are all out of my life. I had I couldn't sleep. I had insomnia for about 7 years, where I slept an average of about 3 to 3.5 hours a night. That was the average. So some of them were one or zero, and for 7 years. And I sleep miraculously now. I would have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I meditate every day, at least an hour a day, but usually it goes into 2 and sometimes 3 hours a day, and I just freaking love it. It is miraculously fun for me. Instead of being anxious and having all that stuff going on in my head and
uh-huh.
rethinking and overthinking everything. So it is, yeah, it's really fun. Again, the physical element is kind of the secondary
Mhm.
flake off thing that happens at the end that we just keep hearing back about.
Someone is asking, David Hatch would like to know, if you might tell us, do you have experience dealing with strokes, particularly in the visual cortex?
With strokes, like reoccurring strokes.
I would assume so. Just maybe the first things that come to your mind. Yeah, with the cortex, strokes in the cortex.
Yeah, strokes in the prefrontal cortex or the cortex. I'm not thinking of any right now. It has been like I've been doing it for about 7 years now, so
Yeah,
I really have to think about like the specific
right. A time.
stroke. I would though, if it were me and it was a physiological stroke issue, I would do the program along with meeting with Dr. Oliver, which was the doctor the neurological, the functional neurologist that I worked with that has some really unique methodologies, but he's also just a freaking amazing person.
I
He's
love that.
obsessed. He's just obsessed with what he does. So when he gets like something he can't figure out, he's one of those people that stays up at night,
It'll figure
like
it out.
trying to figure it out. Not even though he has kids and he's got all these other things going on, his mind just wants that.
Yeah. So we have roughly 5-ish minutes before our meeting's over. So if anyone has any questions you'd like to ask, from the ones I received, we've
Yeah.
got through those. Go
So
ahead.
if someone wants to sign up and they want to use that, they want to get the free facilitator, there's a
Yes,
little code to put in there
I'll type it.
that makes it free. However, I am not sure what it is. So there's a number I'll give you to text so that you can get it. And the number is 801-305-4421. I'm going to double check it because I'm going off memory now. Let's see. 405-3321. I think I said it wrong. 801-405-3321. So you can text that number and say,
Can I read it back to you? It's 801 and then 405-3321.
yes, that's
Cool.
correct.
That's in the chat, you guys, if anyone would like that. That is
Um, and then also, if you have family members or people you want to bring into it or people that you want to bring into it, you can reach out to us. We have like a little webinar thing that we can share that has a lot of the same information in it. If you want some help, like getting people on board, then I'm happy, especially teenagers, younger kids. If you're a parent, have some real good tricks that helps really get it there, like help them see it and understand it. It will help you. However, if you still struggle to do that, if you start the program yourself, you will actually start to figure out things that you can do that will influence your kids at a much higher level. Like learning to influence other people. If you want to be a leader or you want to learn to influence people, like this is another thing that this program helps you really understand, because you start to understand the neurochemical system behind their behavior. So then you can look at them and go, oh, it's most likely this, this, and this. If I do this, this, and this, it'll fill that need, it'll remove the threat, and then they'll open up. Like they'll open up to what, you know, what things I can help them discover. Right? It's not I'm trying to tell them or make them do anything. It's just let me help them discover, get them into a place of discovery, and get that done. And we do, and just so everyone knows, we have 100% money back guarantee with all of our programs. So within 30 days, there's a few basic things that if you've done those and you still don't think it's for you or whatever, we'll give you 100% of that money back. And we rarely have that happen. We rarely have that happen to someone who actually does the things that we that we require, which is just the basics. So we want people to do it, not just, you know, throw money at it and then not do anything and then say, oh, it didn't work because I didn't do anything. So does anybody else have any other questions or anything? Or any comments or anything to share with me? I'm open to learn and to add and to, you know, be a part of everything.
You guys can unmute too if you don't want to use chat. And if you don't have anything to say, that's okay too, but feel free to unmute yourselves. We didn't have breakout rooms, so anything you want to share is beautiful. Okay. I did want to just, if I might share one more thing that's been really beautiful. Going back to what you were saying about the 5-hour session that people will go through when we first get into the program. The way that you explain the information is so safe to the brain, but it creates such transformational change. And I have to say, my own change inside of your program personally was that it was right away. It was day one. It wasn't necessarily waiting until day 30 to see different change. It was day one. Like having that 5-hour session and someone sit there and actually explain why and go deep into the understanding of it. It's really amazing. I imagine it's like a ball of yarn, and you, the way you explain it, just like you just slowly start to unwind the ball of yarn, and we start to get to the core of things, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just found it, right? And so I just want to say that, yeah, you're really great at that, and you've been a fabulous teacher for me. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And it is really different for everyone. Everyone has different experiences. We have a guy that he was like, I was just a big doubter. I did it for my daughter because she wanted me to do it. So I just did it. And then I was like, I'm just gonna get my money back. I'm just gonna do all the stuff he said. It's gotta be a scam. There's no way it's this good. And then he came to a live session. And when he came to the live session, halfway through the session, he was on the front row, just challenging me and like doubting everything and just saying this, that. And I loved it because that's how my brain works. Like I love when they come up with that because then I can really help him see it. And halfway through that thing, he literally jumped up and he's like, I can't believe this. Like, you are so right. This is it. Like, it's true. And he has had the biggest transformation. I can't tell you, he has been through some really rough things recently with his daughter being threatened by her ex-husband to kill their family and all these intense things. And the guy, he's a facilitator now, and he's a business owner, has a big business, and he still does all this stuff along with his business. And he is creating this new business, writing a book. He's doing all this amazing stuff now since he's had this experience, and it's just incredible. I just love it. So if you guys have doubts or questions, I am so open to hear and to see if we can understand each other, figure things out. But it really ends up, the one thing I will say, it ends up being fun. If nothing, our sessions are fun. We're laughing like throughout the whole thing. Like people are just cracking up, and it is just like a blast. And I know it's a funny thing to think that we're overcoming mental health, but we're having fun the whole time. But that's how you do it. That's how it works.
So are you okay with one last question? Is there an email they can reach out to you if they want to talk to you about the questions you've shared with tonight specifically? Or would you prefer them just going through your website? If someone has questions for you and wants to chat about concerns, can they reach out to you?
So we have a team that kind of helps.
Yes.
I kind of get bombarded. So,
Mhm.
but you can send something to my email just as long as you're not like expecting a response in a day's time. It might be two or
Cool.
three.
Okay.
So, but we also have that number I gave you to text is
Oh,
really
good.
the best. There's actually four people that can answer those questions and get them to me. If it's something specific for me,
Beautiful.
they can get them to me, and I'll get that faster than an email from somebody.
Cool.
But I am happy to share it if somebody has something that's a big idea or something they want to,
I'll actually give you
partnership.
I'll actually give you their email if that works.
Oh yeah, that would work great. That would be more efficient, I think.
Efficient. Yes. Right
Yeah,
on.
but yeah, I'm super open to partnerships or ideas or anyone that has a group coming and doing a day thing or something. One of the things that if I had more time here, one of the things I would have done is take everybody through a process. And the one we did at Yin on Fire, I don't know if I don't recognize anyone here as anyone that was at any of our things that we did, but we did one on love and unconditional love, which is really the foundation of everything. And the one of the
Mhm.
biggest things we seem to struggle to understand as a race is what unconditional love is.
Mhm.
I still don't totally understand it, but the depth at which this model helps people break out of the conditions on their love that they have for everyone around them, and the game that they're playing with these conditions they have for everyone in their lives is is phenomenally life changing in and of itself. And so a lot of times when I have more time, we'll actually go through that process, which
Mm.
is mind blowing. So if at Yin on Fire, we're going to do it again. So, but if you run into if you see anything else we're doing and you can come attend one of those, we do Learn to Fly events every once in a while. We call them Learn to Fly because the acronym for Fulfill Life Yourself is FLY.
Mm.
Because once you get all this stuff off your shoulders, you literally feel like you can just fly. And just as a side note, as a child, I had these dreams that I could fly over and over and over. And they were so real that when I woke up, I couldn't decide if I was going into a dream or coming out of a dream, which one was real and which one was the dream. And they were
Well,
so real. And in every one of my dreams, it was the same thing. It was something I was doing in my mind. It was something I was focused on. It was how I focused. It was what I did, and I could fly. And when I turned a teenager, other people started coming into the dream, and I was teaching them. And and so the acronym has a lot of meaning to me because that literally happened
mm.
hundreds of times in my childhood, and now it's real. Like in my adulthood, I forgot about it. Didn't have like a long time. I just didn't. And then when I started putting this together, these memories started coming back of my childhood, and I was like, "Whoa, this is really cool." so it's a lot of fun, and I'd love to get to know people more. And I'm gonna come to more of these because this community is really cool, and I'm excited to to be be in that
Mhm.
circle of friendships.
Yes. Well, I'm really so grateful. I think everyone could agree. You had a lot of comments that just wanted to thank you for your time, and it's been fabulous. We'll post this on the recording for anyone that missed it, and we've got your phone number and your website. And yeah, so grateful for the knowledge and the studying that you do 4 hours a day to show up and teach us with the 1 hour that we gave you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I
Yes.
appreciate it so much.
Hey guys, is there any last questions before we wrap up tonight? Or any last comments anyone wants to make? They're giving me the nods. Okay, I think we're golden.
Okay. All
Hey,
right.
thank you
Thanks.
guys. Have a beautiful night.
All right.
See
Love
ya.
you all. See
Love
ya.
you.